Hello, welcome back. Or nice to meet you, depending on where you're coming from. Certainly glad you could join us today. You're listening to Pop Culture Bento, a collection of conversations about movies, TV, comics, games, anime, and the culture surrounding them. This is episode 25. It's our, that's right, it's their silver podcast anniversary, folks. And I'm one of your co-hosts, Jack Russell, and joining me today is my fellow co-host, Bradley McGinnis.
Hey, how you doing?
And in the blue corner, Justin Russell.
I want you, Brad.
Can't handle me, Justin.
You guys doing good today?
Yes, sir.
I'm
Nice.
pretty dandy.
Ah, yes.
I will kill you over that. Danny's mine.
That's really good to hear. Yeah, like I said, this is episode 25. We did it. We've survived 25 years of podcast marriage. We didn't divorce each other.
If our podcast was alive, it would be having the, what is it now, the millennial quarter life crisis? Because that's totally a thing now.
So, of course, we're recording this on March 15th, which is the the Thursday before St. Patrick's Day. So, as you know, this show is run by two Japanese people, but also we have one Irish man.
I'm surprised you didn't call yourself Irish first and Japanese second.
We do have the Irish. That's where Russell comes from, so.
Yeah. But, I mean, most of all, I wanted to honor you, Brad, and tell you how much I appreciate you on this great day. Would you like to say a speech for St. Patrick's Day?
To all those willing to brave the fields come St. Patrick's Day, brace your livers and hold your mugs high and celebrate the National Day of Getting Shit-Faced.
May your future be filled with the potato.
I don't even know what it truly celebrates anymore. I know St. Patrick was probably a dude at some point.
He was a guy that did a thing. Indeed.
Yeah.
Shame on me for not knowing this day forwards, backwards, left, and right. I really need to brush up on my my heritage.
That's okay. We all just drink and get drunk and don't remember
We're
anything
all Irish
anyways,
on St. Patrick's Day. Hey!
So everyone be safe out there and, call an Uber if you're too drunk to drive. That's been your PSA from Pop Culture Bento. All right, so let's get into the show. We're going to talk about Black Panther today. That will be our featured discussion. We're going to talk about Tomb Raider. We're going to talk about Toys R Us's and all sorts of other good, funny stuff. So stick with us and we'll catch you up on all the news and good stuff from this past week. So let's start off with the entertainment news and notes. So this first piece of news isn't technically, I guess, specifically video games, but I just threw it under here. But
Still applies. Because
I mean,
they are a video game retailer, not primarily, but...
yeah, didn't mean to bury the lead there, but Toys R Us is closing or selling all of their stores.
It's like a part of my childhood dying, man. That's... Oh, that hits in the feels.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Blockbuster died for me, or not died, it just kind of, went bankrupt and folded. So they filed for bankruptcy, and they disclosed that they had about $5 billion in debt.
Dear God.
And was spending about $400 million a year just to service that debt. So they weren't doing so hot. Like most brick and mortar stores, sales are down, I think, across the board for retailers. But I don't know, the sun's setting on an era of, toys and other...
I will unapologetically say right now, the 90s is one of the best times to grow up as a kid when it came to toys and other accessories like that. Toys R Us was my jam growing up. And not ashamed to admit that my parents would go to great lengths during the holidays to get that certain hot topic toy item, namely Power Rangers, because I love that shit. And it's ingrained in my memory, dude. Like, Toys R Us is right there as me as a kid, I could touch anything I wanted to, any of the merchandise, and nobody would yell at me because, hey, it's Toys R Us. Oh,
Yeah,
you don't have that with online retailers.
For a future where we're heading, where it's going to be all like automated UPS trucks, and web stores, I think you lose kind of like that tactile feeling of getting to see, a figure or, whatever in the store before buying it. So that's really unfortunate for everyone. Justin, any particular, do you have hold any fondness for Toys R Us in your heart, or are you saddened by this news?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm devastated. Pouring out for old Jeffrey the Giraffe. No, not particularly. I mean, of course, we all grew up with things like Toys R Us or KB Toys and the like. But
KB Toys.
that's not. We're in such an age where online retailing has taken over, and more than that, the times that I've sort of like visited Walmart for something quick, they have everything there anyways, and I think they're more competitively priced and more accessible. There are more of them, and they're sort of, a parent can go and do their grocery shopping and then just pick up a toy for a kid. And like you were saying, it's less so that I understand the desire for the tactile feeling of going to the store, and it's just the nature of how we shop nowadays of you know what you want and you type it into the search bar and you get it delivered to you, right? And I guess there is that feeling of mystery that is revoked from the next generation or even this generation, where it's sort of like you go into the half price bin. You go to Best Buy and you have
Dude,
like,
those
these
are great.
DVDs are like half off. Go nuts, and they're all unsorted because it's a more worthy business decision to just unsort them. It's not worth their time to even like put it in alphabetical order. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'd reckon that the new version of that is the App Store, which is this sort of unsorted garbage bin of like, a
Oh, right.
7-year-old can use their parents' iPad. And
their credit card.
Yeah, and they're probably not being super. We always hear stories of them being like, "Oh my God, you spent $1,000," because kids aren't watching. They're not being supervised when they're like browsing the App Store, right? So they're gonna hand it to them. They're gonna play Minecraft for a little bit, but then they're gonna like browse and get into weird, like
Dark shit.
Yeah, like no review type of apps, and. No, I'm not even saying like dark stuff. I'm just saying like really weirdly garbage bin, like Chinese knockoff type stuff.
Yeah,
where
fake
it's like,
PUBG and stuff.
Yeah, and that's sort of I'd say akin to like in the 80s when a kid might go and like they would only have like one game, because
Right.
games were more expensive back then. So they would play like the Ghostbusters video game, which like was terrible, but that would be their game and they loved it.
Was Jedi Power Battles like that version of ours?
Yeah, that's ours because we didn't have the purchasing power because we were 10, right?
Right.
So we just played Jedi Power Battles, and even though it
So
sucks, we loved it and we played it for years. So
It's the
I
best.
think even though it is sad, it still exists in a certain form. Just depends on where you look at it.
And just as a caveat, I feel like I should disclose that I may be biased in my reporting because I used to be a former Toys R Us employee. I used to work in the Babies R Us section. That was my department, and it would absolutely just shock me and gobsmack me that how much parents would pay for premium price point items for their babies that the babies won't even remember because they're below the age of like 2, which is nuts to me, but.
It's like even worse than toting out a lot of money for your dog's apparel.
Right.
I don't know which one's worse. They're both equally evil in my book.
Does your babby really need like a designer, quilted crib? Like, as long as it doesn't, kill the kid and has safety features, like you don't need that extraneous crap to me. But
No, that's this. It's like when you get a new iPhone, and you're like, "Oh, I'm already spending hundreds of dollars. I need to get like the best case,
A cover
and,
case, yeah.
like a 10-foot cable that's like aluminum
selfie stick.
alloy reinforced, and
Adamantium.
like and the glass screen protector. It's the same thing where it's less for practical purposes and more like just because it's a premium thing in your brain,
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
if they developed protective cases for babies, people would buy that shit easily.
Yeah, use the squeegee to get the bubbles out.
okay, so next up we have some Soul Calibur 6 news. Geralt of Rivia. I just paused because I couldn't remember if I said Geralt right.
Yeah,
All right, no,
Geralt.
I thought you were just like
Geralt.
waiting for the shock,
Yeah,
the
that's
awe
right.
factor to kick in, which is appropriate.
Yeah, so they dropped a character announcement trailer today for Soul Calibur 6. Yeah, the protagonist from The Witcher 3, which is to me one of my favorite open world RPGs of all time. I think they had the same voice actor. The animations looked really slick.
Awesome.
Yeah, he made Mitsurugi look like a total bitch when he like kicked his ass with magic. Like they're having like this like honorable sword fight between a katana Eastern, soldier versus like a Western like Polish, demon slayer, and then he just like
Nope.
blows him out of the water with like magic. It cracks me up, but it also looks really cool. Any anticipation or anything for Soul Calibur or Geralt or any other?
For me, that wouldn't be enough to make me go in the direction of buying a new Soul Calibur game in the future. I've had plenty of fun with them in the past, but the most I could ever do is maybe rent it for a while. I can't invest as much time into a fighting game. Dragon Ball Fighter Z excluded, because that thing is awesome. I really need to pick it up. But just no, it's cool, but it would not be like, hey, this is going to be the defining, like this is going to be the reason why I'm getting this game.
I used to play Soul Calibur. I want to say, was it 2 or 4? With the ones the generation with like Spawn, Darth Vader, Link,
the best
Heihachi
ones.
from Tekken.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to play that, but my coordination is just dropped below. It's so bad I can't play fighting games anymore or shooters, to be honest. Justin, any comments about Soul Calibur 6?
Yeah, we used to play Soul Calibur a little bit. I think part of it is, online gaming there's all the talk about the death of couch co-op or couch multiplayer. And I think the reason we were into fighting games before was because the skill level was more, I guess, equal. Like it's not really fun beating up against a computer, because I don't know, you can set the difficulty level and they're sort of predictable, I guess, or you don't feel like you're besting a certain standard of like,
right.
I don't know, skill.
A real champion.
And online makes it so that you recognize exactly how terrible you are, because either there's a ranking system that says, hey, you're like a C-, or you just get your butt kicked every round and you're like, oh, I can feel how bad I am. And Couch Co-op had it so that you and me are like 15-year-olds or whatever, and we're just beating each other up without using skill moves, right? We're not memorizing combos. We're just trying to do our best with... Also, side note, remember the Soul Calibur dude who like would be like a weird slithering snake with dual blades, and he would like
Was
go
it
up
Voldo?
backward? Valdo. That was so gross. Anyways,
He was a nasty man.
The yoga master.
yeah, more pertinent to the news, for Geralt, is like one of the least interesting characters in
I'll
all of
give you
video
that.
games, I think.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
his voice acting is terrible,
Yes,
and I just don't
yes.
like how he's wrought. So, yeah, not really huge news either way for me. And
Yeah.
I'll mention that every time there's like a guest appearance character, it's always so weird to me. I don't know why. It just doesn't fit the... I like the cohesive aesthetic between like Tekken is more anime-y and sort of
I see.
they have their own
Like
identity.
having Game & Watch and Smash Bros, it's like, what the hell is this guy doing here?
Well, Smash Bros, the whole aesthetic of Smash Bros is sort of this conglomerate of disparate things under the umbrella of Nintendo. But it is a little weird when Snake is in it, maybe a little bit, or Pac-Man, maybe a little bit, but not to
Snake
the
next to
extent.
Mario.
Yeah, but they're all sort of animated and like there's a little more leeway. But to the extent that Yoda and Darth Vader were in, I think Tekken or Soul Calibur, right back in the day, like
Soul
10 years ago.
Calibur.
So like that always felt weird. Where it's like this is like it's like buying two puzzles from the same company, and they are both cut in the same shape, except they both have different pictures. And then if you like took one piece from one puzzle
You
and
make
put
an
it in the
abomination
other,
between the two.
and you're like, okay, it fits, it works, but it doesn't feel right for some reason, right?
Yeah.
So like, I'm
Franken-puzzle.
sure they balance it, they quality test it in terms of both gameplay and aesthetic of like, oh, let's try to like tweak it a little bit to be true to both, the original IP, but also our game. But still, there's that sense that it's a little bit out of place for me, regardless of what character it is.
Valid point, but force choking bitches is delightful.
Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remasters coming to Steam with a new 3D engine. So this is courtesy of Realtek VR on Twitter. let me read the official tweet for you. It says TR1 through 3 remaster for PC are planned for Steam for free, and requires the purchase of the DOS version being sold on Steam, like Z-Doom playing Doom games. Also, the PC version will support OpenVR and features a new 3D engine for both 3 games. Someone clearly did not edit the copy on this tweet, but we get the message. Grammar aside, sounds like it's a remaster with potential VR capabilities of.
I could see that going badly for a number of reasons. The VR, people will be looking in one direction for quite a bit.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting to me because the only memory I have of OG Tomb Raider is a Pizza Hut demo disc.
Dude, yeah, I played the same one.
Yeah, I think it was Tomb Raider 1 on PS1. And like the control scheme now has aged horribly. Like
it's god awful.
It was kind of like GoldenEye level of aiming where you had to use like the triggers to like go aim up and down the Y-axis or whatever, or X. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician, but so I hope in the remaster that they can change some of those things to make it dual stick modern.
Hopefully,
aiming.
yeah.
Or something, because even the new Tomb Raiders would just like blow it out of the water, and then you go play the old ones, and it's like, what the hell is this garbage?
Well, dude, there's really no going back. I mean, the new Tomb Raider games are quite an accomplishment, and also it's not the how do I phrase this? It's not the Tolkien busty babe character. She's like actually a character you can get invested in, besides just looking at her pixely naughty bits. Which, dude, she was basically a sex icon back in the day when like Tomb Raider first came out for video games.
She certainly was.
Now she's graduated to a full blown respectable woman with her own movie.
She's grown with the times. That's excellent. I applaud her. Justin, any interest in a Tomb Raider remaster?
Maybe. I mean, I do remember playing that Pizza Hut demo disc, and you're right. Like using the shoulder buttons, it was just is insane, just craziness.
Garbage.
And I remember we couldn't even get out of the starting room. I would like jump up on the walls and stuff, and it was just really weird. So the thing is that, well, first off, I don't even know what the validity of this tweet is, because like you were mentioning, there's like grammatical weirdness going on, and like it's a reply to another reply. But it says features a new 3D engine for both 3 games, which doesn't make sense. But like, it sort of brings me back to the whole discussion of remakes in general, or remasters, and how, first off, the two terms are so weirdly connected and also not the same, but the same at the same time. It's all very weird. Where
Right.
There's the whole just straight up remastering something, like maybe updating back to like The Last of Us or like the Sega classics, bringing it back,
Mm-hmm.
Or there's the full ground up remake of, say, the Shadow of Colossus that came out, or
Right,
the
good
Crash
point.
Bandicoots, or Secret of Mana that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's also just the re-releasing of, like, Nintendo's been doing it forever, and most notably recently with the Virtual Console, NES, and SNES. So it's very interesting, the different kind. Like, you say the word remake or remaster, and it doesn't mean anything. It's so case by case, and it's all in the software, and it's all people smarter than us who know emulators or know game engines. So that's all very interesting. And when they say a new 3D engine for both 3 games, which again doesn't make sense, but like, does that mean...
I want to start just using that more often for both 3 of them.
Yeah. So is that like a ground up Control remaster where you can actually get Lara out of the first room by using the analog stick like a normal game nowadays? Or are they just, re-upping the graphics a little bit, so it's easy on the eyes? It's also nebulous that you really need more information on a case by case basis to, have anything meaningful to say about it.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So we'll keep our eyes and ears open and peeled to track this news. So, all right. And the final piece of news, it's a game called Scavengers, and Justin has the deets on that. So take it away, Justin.
Yeah, well, I have the Game Informer article in front of me. And the headline is former Halo Battlefield devs announce Scavengers, a third-person co-op petition, if I said that right, shooter, which is
They're
obviously
going to have to work on
a
that.
portmanteau of
Co-op
co-op
petition.
and competitive.
Right.
And apparently, so a lot of experienced people from 343, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo. Those guys are making a new game where it's sort of like a survival shooter looter type game. And it's set in a near future apocalypse. Massive android collides with the moon, shattering it and causing a new ice age. And if you see the not screenshots, because I can tell that this is very early, and they just were it was
like key
it was a
art, the
video
concept art.
of devs talking, which means they don't have
Neat.
anything yet.
Yeah.
But not to sound too cynical, because it actually sounds really awesome, and the concept art looks really beautiful. It looks like Destiny. I'm not gonna lie.
It does. That's what I was gonna
We were
say.
just
but
mentioning.
with teenagers.
Yeah, we're just mentioning like it's former Halo dudes, right? And of
Right.
course, there's a lot of weird overlap between 343, who never worked on Bungie, but people might have come from old Bungie or been touched by those old ideas before Destiny was released, because that was in the oven for so many years. So it's really interesting on that side, but I don't have any visibility on that side, so I'm not going to mention it. But in terms of the game itself, it says that the matches are sort of like 30 to 45-minute little stints where you sort of group up in parties, maybe 2 to 4. They're still experimenting with party size for game balance. And game balance is sort of important because of the really interesting way the matches are organized, in that these different squads have different objectives. I know a lot of board games do this, where it's like, oh, you're all trying
yeah.
to survive a zombie apocalypse, but this person has ulterior motives. Like this person's card says to survive for 3 nights. This person's card says collect 3 bandages or whatever. This person's
It's like
card
that
says
asymmetrical game
kill
design, right?
kill the person to their right or something like that. It is that
Yeah.
asymmetrical thing where I'd imagine in these 30 to 45-minute sessions, you're all dropped in these snowy wildernesses that are reclaimed by these weird alien things that are in these concept arts, which again very much look like Destiny. But I think that's a really interesting dynamic thing where in this video these devs are sort of explaining how they don't want to. They sort of explain how current games of this ilk, open world games, focus very much on exploring a very static environment that doesn't really evolve and isn't very dynamic. You're just kind of going around fetching stuff, namely like Destiny. It's very much like that, right?
Right.
It's a sort of empty, sparse world where, it's big and beautiful, but you don't really feel anything going place to place. But in this, I think it's going to be a lot more dynamic based on what they're saying, because of these really interesting, overlapping, sort of coinciding goals that these different squads have. And you can come up against another squad and say one squad is fighting a different
Don't shoot.
Yeah, they're fighting a bunch of aliens or something. Maybe you want to help them out. Maybe you want to wait it out and see if they can get thinned a little bit so you can finish off the task. And
Dude, I'm
scavenge
glad you
their...
said that. I think there's going to be a massive potential for backstabbing in this
Right.
game. If it's co-opetition, whereas the line between friend and enemy is blurred.
Yeah,
Is that
so
what Survivor's genre was on TV?
Co-op. I'll be your buddy for today.
yeah, I think that's a really interesting and, like they were saying, dynamic way, instead of, hey, this NPC says to go fetch this thing,
I guess what I'm curious about is, we were talking about this off mic a little bit, but how they plan on positioning the game, whether they're like, hey, we're designing this to show up at, professional competitive MLG, scenes
Yeah.
and stuff. I don't know if it's more co-op or if it's more competition.
Dude, I just want them to call it an online, massively multiplayer online co-opetition game. I want them to say it once.
But yeah, it does sound really cool, and yeah, absolutely. I know this is an audio medium, so you're probably sitting in your car, being like, "What the hell are they talking about?" But when you get a chance, go to Game Informer and look at the art and the video. It looks really, really.
It
slick.
does look like that sort of reclaimed future Earth that is reclaimed by nature because of this ice age. It's very pretty. And I sort of mentioned this when I was playing PUBG with our friends, but I was sort of mentioning how PUBG is fun. All these battle royale things are in vogue right now. But there's a certain psychological aspect to something like DayZ. Remember DayZ? The craze when like DayZ was what started everything in terms of all these, this
Right.
genre. And it was so underdeveloped, but that sort of worked to its advantage because you would see things online, like little short snippets where it's like, hey, like drop your pants or I'll shoot you, drop your pants, that kind of stuff. Where it's not about winning the chicken dinner. It's not about the sick 3K where you're doing a 360, kill the dude. It's like all these weird moments that are more socially driven. And I've always thought that PUBG would be more dynamic if like you could pick up zip ties, and you can like you take out a guy's squad, like kill 3 guys or 2 guys maybe, and then you zip tie the last guy, and you're like, oh, my team needs ammo or my team needs med kits. So you're like, hey, I'll like return your friend. You can take off the zip ties
Hold him for ransom.
if you give us a gun or something,
Give the hostage some pizza.
But the inherent structure of PUBG, the battle royale, like fight to the death nature of that game, and the genre as it's sort of developing, doesn't allow for these social stories to happen. And I think that a dynamic world that is more socially nuanced, like what they're claiming scavengers could be, I think that's kind of cool.
We'll keep our finger on the pulse regarding this and keep you all posted as this story develops. So, all right, that's it for your news for this week. So let's move on to the 10-day media forecast. All right, so in this segment, we parse through what's on the upcoming release radar. So let's mark up your calendars and see what's coming out in the next 10 days. So if you're listening to this day one, if you're getting in on the ground floor of this podcast, it's March 16th, Friday, and you can look forward to Kirby Star Allies on the Nintendo Switch and Burnout Paradise Remastered on a PS4, Xbox One, which we mentioned last week a little bit in depth. And then Tomb Raider, starring Alicia Vikander, comes out in theaters. Go raid those tombs. March 19th, Ni no Kuni 2. Formerly, the first game was partnered with the Ghibli, and it was like a really cutesy, cartoony art style RPG. And so the sequel comes out on Monday, which I am very much looking forward to. Is Ni no Kuni 2 on any of you guys' radar, or is it just me?
No, it's definitely hit my Switch a little bit. I haven't played the first one, so that would be sacrilegious for me to jump the second one and not play the first. But
Right.
I will keep it in mind.
Yeah, what I've heard is that it's a good jumping on point because it's like several hundred years after the events of one. So
I was going to say
really
it
matter.
definitely looked like it was a departure from the groundwork of the first game. Okay, well, I wouldn't feel so bad about jumping onto it then.
Definitely.
Out of all of the games of its ilk, it's the one that I'm most interested in. I'm not super interested in it, but I think strictly because of the aesthetic and the first one was Ghibli. This one I don't think is, but it still carries on that legacy, I think, and those inspirations. And it's just really inviting. And I don't know, the gameplay, I saw a GIF of it. It kind of looked like Monster Hunter, but crappy. Because they were like fighting a dragon, but the dragon's animations weren't very nuanced. It looked very
Dude,
like,
we're all spoiled because
stiff.
of Monster Hunter. Like, no dragon will ever match up now.
So if it's like a casual version of RPG, like traditional RPG Final Fantasy mixed with light Monster Hunter-ish elements, maybe I'm into it. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass because I don't really know. But like I said, the aesthetic definitely caught my eye.
Finally, we have here March 23rd, which is a Friday. Big day for media. We have Pacific Rim Uprising.
Yep, watching it.
Yep, it's a sequel to the Guillermo del Toro robot kaiju movie.
I'm a simple man. You have giant robots fighting giant monsters. I'll watch it.
Although, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe that del Toro actually had to leave the production.
What, like halfway through, or?
I'm not sure exactly when, but I don't think he's a part of it anymore.
That
Someone else
kinda
took it
sucks.
over. Yeah, so hopefully they can recapture some of the quirkiness that the first one offered. So, also, Isle of Dogs comes out in theaters as well. Have you guys heard of this one?
Yeah, the Wes Anderson stop motion.
Yeah. It's very much like the Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah.
I'm actually really looking forward to that one because I really like Mr. Fox. And A Way Out for PS4, which is the online co-op only game where you buy it, you give the code to some friend, and then you guys can play a jailbreak, like theatrical looking.
Very cinematic.
Right.
It's Joseph Ferris, who I think is Swedish. I'm not going to commit to that. European.
Oh, there you go.
To make it more broad.
He's an Earthling.
Yes, he's a human man, and he is a very renowned filmmaker in his country of origin, his nondescript birthplace. But
His motherland.
yeah, he has a very extensive film background, and he made the transition to games a few years, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, with I'd say 5 years ago with Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is the game. It's sort of this fantastical game where you're controlling a set of brothers with one controller. Each analog stick controls a brother. And it's sort of this top-down, third-person, story, platformy kind of puzzle thing, right? And your left and right triggers also function as the action keys, like grabbing ledges or grabbing items for each brother as well. Mm-hmm. So essentially, it's like a pat, head, rub, tummy kind of deal, where you have to explore these two things working in synchronicity. You have to explore timings of when to, like, this brother's jumping and this guy has to like push a button while he's jumping to do the thing. So you're kind of controlling these moves independently with your thumbs. So it's a really interesting, and not to spoil anything because I don't think you guys have played it, but
I have not.
If you're listening, you should play it. So I'm not going to spoil it, but the gameplay informs the emotional and empathic, the way you interact with the game, and the independence with which you're controlling each brother is not just a gimmick. It works into the narrative and why things in the story happen in a certain way.
Okay.
To be general about it.
Yeah, I know you're a sucker for those types of games, so that's really cool to hear.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, so that's it for your release radar. So let's move on to what we've been playing lately. All right, so this segment is called What's Poppin', and this is a variety segment where we talk about what's poppin' in the world of, you guessed it, pop culture. So I'll start us off. I've been playing, actually, it's literally today, the day of this recording, I got into the early access of Fortnite for iOS. Fortnite, the super popular right now, super hot, that's a different game. Very, very popular battle royale shooter. Kind of like second to market after PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So it's on PC, it's on PS4, and now for your handheld Apple or Android device. So just to share a couple thoughts, it's supposed to be cross-play with PC and PS4, which I immediately, to me, poses a problem of...
Yeah, that raised an eyebrow on my end.
You're playing against mouse and keyboard shooters who are super accurate.
With
and
your thumbs.
Yeah, on a touchpad, which to me was super floaty and got the job done, but was so imprecise. And then also, PS4 players who are using twin stick, analog sticks, which is less precise than PC. But
I love the gradient that's developing.
It's accurate. It's accurate too. PC Master Race.
Yeah, so it was nuts. It functioned fine. Like, it was Fortnite straight up. It wasn't like a gimpy, nerfed version of it. But it's just weird to me how a lot of the tactics used nowadays are like really quick, deft, like dexterous building and placement of like walls and like platforms, stuff like that. And you were neither deft nor dexterous on a 5-inch.
Yeah, hell no. I'm surprised they even went with this.
Yeah, it felt so wonky. So to me, it's a good option if you don't have a console or a PC and want to get it on the Battle Royale action. But yeah, if you have any of those other avenues to play, then I don't know, it just seemed kind of gimmicky or...
Well, the reason it's not a big deal is because it's not a very. I don't want to say it's not a good game, but it's not supposed to be this hyper competitive. Like it if you're skilled at it, you got skills. So I'm not gonna like say, oh, like if you're good at it, it doesn't matter because it's not a competitive game. I'm not gonna like, it takes skill to be good at it. But at the same time, it's not a game that's designed to be hyper competitive.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what I
still
mean?
a free game at its core. So you
Yeah, it's
kinda
not
gotta
like
get what you
Counter
get.
Strike where every move matters and there's so much knowledge about every corner of a map. Or no, you sort of just wildly run around, and it takes fast reactions. It's really up. It's all reactions. You get shot a little bit, you're like, oh crap, so you build a bunch of walls. You see someone across the map, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna engage this dude, and whoever is better at aiming is gonna shoot the guy more, and they're gonna die, right? And I know they're patching it up to be a little different in terms of the gun mechanics, but I know that when I was playing it, the bloom on the guns in terms of like when you're firing an assault rifle is ridiculous. Like it's completely inaccurate. So, and it's completely random as well. So really it's supposed to be a pretty casual experience anyways. So that's why it doesn't really matter. Like if a 15-year-old wants to, not learn about trigonometry and sit in the back of the class and play some Fortnite, even though it sucks on a, virtual touchpad, they're going to do it and they're going to be like, oh, it's better than, math. So it's a pretty low bar in terms of the user experience, I think.
Just as like a funny side anecdote, my girlfriend's a teacher, and she hates Fortnite because primarily because all of her students found a way on their school laptops to wipe their hard drives and install Fortnite, and everyone was playing it. And so after that, they were supposed to take like a test, and they couldn't take the test because they had also
wiped the drives.
Yeah, they wiped like the testing software. So she was like,
so funny.
She was like raging at like how this game is like.
Yeah,
the
but
bane of her
students will
existence.
always do that kind of stuff. We played a lot
I never
of.
did that crap.
Like you do the thing where you put when iPods were still a thing, and it wasn't just an all-in-one Swiss Army knife solution in your phone. You would put the earbud cable through your sweatshirt and then rest your head against it so you can listen to music in class. Stuff like little hacks like that. You'd play like the Final Fantasy ripoff on your TI-83 calculator, and like we used to play Halo in computer science. So it's always like that. And I'm sure in like the 1800s, like they would like sneak a book under their skirt and like take a peek at the latest Fitzgerald novel or something. Like it's always going to be the same. And then in the future, they're going to like have simulated stimulation in their brain to have like nano narrative experiences during class or whatever. So it's always going to be that
right,
way.
Justin, pave the way for those slackers of the future.
There you go.
Be their visionary.
Well, enough about me. How about you, Brad? What's popping? What's been popping with you?
So in honor of Infinity War coming out actually quite soon, it'll be here before we know it, the 27th, I believe, April. I've been reading up on some of my Thanos material because he's a villain that's he has a lot of chops. He's got a lot of cred to him in his history. He's ruthless, savage. He's one of the cosmic villains of Marvel. And in a recent run on Thanos, I got really pulled in by a new take on the classic Ghost Rider character. In this one, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, he becomes the Ghost Rider. He makes a deal with Mephisto to be the host for the Spirit of Vengeance in an effort to take down Thanos. And then later on, even that Ghost Rider becomes a Herald of Galactus. So that's like mixing the powers of the Silver Surfer with Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider is arguably already over OP, so you get like spacefaring vengeance, fiery spirit of death going on, and I just love it because they're also mixing, the borderline homicide anti-hero Punisher with Ghost Rider. That's a hell of a mix. That crap will never be in the movies, but to see it this kind of stuff still flourish in the comics is really awesome, especially when Marvel's always been on point with their movies. They've unfortunately stumbled in recent years with some of their comics, especially with Nazi Cap we don't like to talk about that. Thankfully, that was sort of an in-universe retcon thing with the Cosmic Cube, so that's done. But I love seeing that kind of crazy stuff go in the comics. And it just really gives me hype for Infinity War, which I'm still curious as how they're going to balance all the elements. Even though, what is it, 2 hour 39-minute runtime for the movie?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be huge.
So that is what I've been getting my nose into.
Nice. Well, as long as if a movie does come out, Nicolas Cage isn't Ghost Rider, then I think I will be just dandy.
And some would fight you to the death saying Nicolas Cage is the only Ghost Rider.
Well,
damn them.
I like him, but not as Ghost Rider. I think
agreed.
The plot, the thing about National Treasure was that it wasn't that they were hunting down the Constitution. The movie is literally about Nicolas Cage because he is a national treasure. That's my position. So, all right. Well, Justin, let's bring it home. What's been popping in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. I finished L.A. Noire, the remaster.
Oh,
yeah,
how's that?
It was actually longer than I thought, but it's such a awesome experience because I played it a long time ago when it first released. I want to say 2010 or 11, right? And I was pretty young then, and I realized how much I missed, and how the not only in the narrative overall, but also in each case, there's these internal logics that happen, and really, it rewards your understanding of each narrative within the case, right? And these characters, part of the skill is learning how to read their facial expressions, and those facial expressions with their motion capture engine still hold up all these years later, which really, like, I know we have games like Hellblade where it's like, oh, it looks awesome, but they were really the pioneers of that, and I'm really surprised how well it's held up. Well acted, well written, like so incredible. But not only is it you're trying to read their faces, but you're really trying to understand the story of what is going on in this weird case. Like, this girl gets murdered and then they leave like a ring, and then that is somehow connected to this guy's motivation. So it's actually really complex and subtle. And I found that to be like, I used to sort of brute force it when I was younger. So I sort of missed out on really trying to understand that. And I think that in a world where, games used to be, you score the points. You get 20 points for killing that Nazi, or you get 10 points for getting the ball into the other opponent's side. But really, this explores a more like social, nuanced reward system that I think is really cool. The narrative overall, also a lot more complex than young Justin realized, because back then I didn't recognize the way that the characters tied into this overall narrative and the relationship to their past, specifically with Cole Phelps, our protagonist. And a lot of it, like I said already, is that L.A. Noire is a huge, blatant ripoff of L.A. Confidential, but in the best way possible, in that they pay a lot of respect to it, and like I love that stuff anyways. But in L.A. Confidential, the movie, but more so, super more so in the book, there's a lot to be said about how Elroy writes these characters that we like and sympathize with, but also have very dark pasts, and how that past reflects onto their current situation, and why they act that way, and what kind of horrible things that they have to live with or redeem themselves for. So that's all very interesting. And Cole Phelps in L.A. Noire has that with his military service, and I sort of didn't get all that when I was younger, but now I'm like, oh my god, the reason he's that way, and the reason he's so like hard edged and he's so sensitive when people call him out about certain things, that's why, because he had this past in the military, like he served in Okinawa, and that was really interesting stuff. And I thought that it was a little too neat how the last few cases sort of introduced a lot of characters from his military service. I thought it was a big coincidence that this big narrative was like, oh, it was all his best friends that was going on, But other than being a little too convenient, I thought it had some pretty interesting things about the messy nature of redemption. Man, if they made LA Noir 2, oh my God, it would be the best thing ever. It would be incredible, man.
But yeah, very cool. Thanks for that. And with that, we're going to wrap up What's Poppin' and move on to our feature discussion. So I know that Justin hasn't seen Black Panther, so as a courtesy to him, we're going to have him bow out. So Justin, adieu. Thank you very much for your services, and we'll see you next time.
Peace. Keep it dandy.
All right. Bradley-san, it's Black Panther time. Let's kick it off. What were your non-spoiler impressions of the movie?
Dude, it was seeing Black Panther come to the big screen was an absolute delight. I've always been a fan of the character for years in the comics. And one thing I had to go back and look, I wasn't really sure which one came, like it's the chicken or the egg kind of thing. I wasn't sure if the character Black Panther came out first or if the Black Panther movement came out first. So I was like,
right.
snap. Thank God Black Panther came out, the character first.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Black Panther
comics.
movie, yeah, they derived some of their inspiration from the character, which if it were the other way around, I could imagine there'd be a lot more turmoil about the character coming to the big screen. Granted, there was already some bit of that, but that won't be the point of this discussion. Dude, it was great. The action was solid. Was there a little bit of overhype to it? Yeah, I'd say so. And that's coming from a comic fan and who's loved the character for years. But I think that they did a great job bringing Wakanda to the big screen, like in all of its Wakandan glory. It's really cool. The technology they have, everything in it. The characters are well developed. It was a movie that I think Marvel needed, and especially for the villain too. Marvel needed another heavy hitter villain besides like just Loki, because unfortunately, you can make the argument that Marvel does have a bit of a villain problem on the big screen. But hey, dude, I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I don't know what I can say that you didn't like. I also agree with Killmonger. I think Loki and the
which
Vulture.
is so not like a terribly obvious villain name.
Yeah, I also think the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton in
Agreed.
Spider-Man: Homecoming, was also excellent, and that just goes to prove that like you don't need to have like a big CGI bad doomsday.
You don't, man.
know.
Sometimes, well, look at and I actually just rented it the other night. Justice League. Unfortunately, it fell very short of what my overall expectations were, but it was still an enjoyable movie. But nobody gave two craps about Steppenwolf as a villain. He's some big bad CGI villain, and he's really just like a pawn for Darkseid. It's just like, the big bad CGI guy doesn't always work.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell, I was more afraid of Michael Keaton when he was like in his dad persona as opposed to the Vulture role.
When he's like sticking up Peter Parker in the car before prom.
Dude,
he's
I
like,
was
I'll kill you if you mess
terrified.
with my daughter. Yeah.
Oh, that was incredible.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought it was excellent, and I really hope. Oh, I think they did confirm a second one, Black Panther 2.
Good.
And I'm excited to see what he does in
Infinity War?
Yeah, sorry, it's
all good.
Not to spoil it, but Black Panther's going to be in the movies, but he's been in all the trailers, so I don't think that's a spoiler. So, anyways, I really liked how you didn't need. It was like a one-off, right? It does fit within the larger Marvel narrative.
Yeah, but
of,
you
like,
didn't
the whole
really
arc.
need to see much of any of the previous. Well,
Yeah.
it helped to know a little bit about Claw before, like from
Sure.
Avengers 2 before going into this. But like, hey, he's a bad guy. He's trying to steal vibranium. We get it. He's an enemy of Wakanda. But yeah, prior to that, you didn't really need much.
Yeah, and I thought it stood on its own. We like to compare these superhero movies against each other and just like
Always.
compare them in the narrow scope of this is a superhero movie, so there's a different bar or a threshold for those types of movies. But
Yeah,
I
different
really
limitations. I'm with you.
But I really thought that Black Panther worked even just as like a regular movie, like comparing it to like the even the some of the best movies. Like it was just really great, well told story on its own. So I respect it for that. I just loved how much of a phenomenon it was also culturally. Like it was kind of like when Pokemon Go happened, everyone was just united in this singular experience that we all shared together. And this one was kind of like that, although it was a little different. I think it's kind of much needed in terms of today's like socio-political climate, and for us to rally around this movie, it's primarily meant for entertainment, but also serves equally as commentary on that type of stuff. It's really powerful, the power of media. It doesn't always just have to be escapism. It can be this type of empowering piece of work.
And you got to be careful when you do that because, primarily comics, things like that, they are a form of escape. and politics in real world issues had their place in the stories, but they had to be executed very carefully. You know, a lot of people were calling also the going off on the comics thing a bit. Nazi Captain America, that was poorly done. That was kind of, some people were accusing like, oh, Marvel's being like super left wing. Sometimes they are, don't get me wrong, but they were comparing like Trump's rise to power, which I thought was a stretch. But I think that story actually could have been told very well, but it was ham-fisted and it did not register with the audience. And they did the one thing you never do: turn Captain America into a fucking Nazi.
Right. Any other non-spoiler impressions you want to touch on? Or do you want to jump into spoiler thoughts?
I want to jump into spoiler thoughts.
Yeah, same. Me here. Me too. So let's jump into spoilers starting right now. Okay, so this is the spoiler section. Bradley, what were your thoughts?
Okay, man, where do I begin? Everything from I love just how they were able to harmonize the respect the cultural upbringing of Wakanda, compared to the technological advancements they've made over the years, which and they take that to a logical extreme, even in the comics. That Wakanda, if it was in isolation for so many years because of its vibranium stockpile, it gives them some serious power in terms of like overall world presence, but they wouldn't be able to advance quite as far like overall for their civilization if they were isolated for that long, because they had an abundance of vibranium, which goes a long way for tech and other things, but they're not going to be world leaders in producing everything. So that part was a little far-fetched, but it rolls with the comics, and it's still a comic book movie, so I let that slide. But dude, I love Wakanda. I love the population, the characters. I mean, heck, sometimes the most powerful moments in the movie didn't even necessarily involve T'Challa himself. The head of his guard, his tribe of warrior women that's intense. And I love how they
strong,
dude. And they did a retro. They're kind of doing retro honorable, like honor your ancestor bit, and they mixed it with their technological advance. It was subtle. Sometimes like the cloaks that the guards had that made the towering energy shields, it was kick-ass. The armor-plated rhinos that they would charge into battle with. That's awesome. Practically, who knows? But that's still really awesome to look at.
That reminded me of like the Phantom Menace when they had like the energy shields and then the poo-poo like camels or whatever.
Absolutely. I love when they mix like what seems to be practical and technologically advanced with certain like low-key or low-tech options too. So I think they struck a nice balance with that. Dude, and I loved the mark of shame that essentially is embodied by Killmonger being the deep dark secret of Wakanda buried for years, then finally come back, and the chickens are coming home to roost. Like, oh god.
Sup, auntie?
Dude, and imagine like that's, and I'm surprised like even that's something I was very curious about, because they touch on for the Marvel universe or comic universes in general, like things like pantheons of gods, like all of them do exist in the comics. So the Bast, the Panther goddess, totally legit, actually a being in there, even though it's kind of more of a spiritual thing in the movie. And you got to trip out on these this magic herb, man, to be able to talk with the Panther goddess.
Yeah, that part got me too.
Dude, that's really they just straight up bury him too. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm fine. I'll just pass out for a little bit and connect with the Panther goddess. Well,
it's like being at the beach and like being buried, except like a weirder, more fucked up version of it.
And then getting heat strokes, so you start seeing things.
And you start seeing like all your dead family members in like whatever vessel or room that you happen to like hold dear to your heart, like a safari jungle or an apartment in like the New York or.
You think you're having a vision quest, but you just wake up in the ER.
The hospital is where I must have my vision quest. It's like, no, dude, like you almost died. You're having an operation. Sorry.
Like, so you're telling my ancestors aren't praising everything I've done? No.
I thought that it's really great that Marvel can take chances on, like, because like if you remember like back in like even the 80s or whatever, Black Panther is such like a deep cut character that's not like one of the main well known in terms of popularity.
Now you can't look any direction involving Marvel comics without seeing Black Panther.
Yeah,
but
I see lunchboxes and backpacks about Black Panther. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like this is bigger than Star Trek now. Like this is nuts,
dude. It's a hell of a cultural movement, and I can understand why. I mean, and the character of Black Panther, like T'Challa specifically, he's awesome. He's the man. He's a benevolent monarch. He's like the exact opposite of Doctor Doom in a lot of ways. Like they're both monarchs, but Doom's pure evil. T'Challa's pure good, arguably. There have been some gray areas in the comics where he's had to make, because he's a king first and like an Avenger second, in the
Right,
comics. He's a
right.
lot like Namor in that regard, where Namor is
Yeah.
all about Atlantis, and like, you know, the rest of the Earth can go F itself as long as Atlantis is fine. That's kind of how T'Challa has to be as King Wakanda. It's a burden that he has to hold, and that actually comes. They don't bring that much into the movie, although there is a conflict between, hey, should we adhere to the traditions of Wakanda as they've done for years, or do I want to make Wakanda something even bigger and greater than it was? Like, should we break out in the world? It's that burden of, do I want to be a king or do I want to be a hero? Sometimes those don't always mix.
Absolutely, and I'm really curious to see what the implications are of. I believe it was the Stinger scene, right? When he was like, "Hey, we're gonna share all of our tech with you all now. Like, what
Yeah.
up?" Yeah. So if I'm kind of wondering now if you see the Infinity War trailer, Cap's rocking some new like glove claw shield looking things.
Arm shields.
I wonder if they're made of vibranium, like
Guarantee
sourced
it.
from Wakanda. You know,
Dude,
that'd be really
hell,
cool.
if you could eat a vibranium, Wakanda would sell that. Like that's the basis for their entire economy and their success is because they've farmed the crap out of that vibranium meteorite that crashed, you know, thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Which, if you look at it as I mean, that thing is a miracle mineral. It's nothing else on Earth matches it. But okay, adamantium does, yes, but that's still a little bit different.
Yeah.
Now, if you mix them together, you have the best thing ever.
Yeah, just like when I mixed that chocolate bar with my spaghetti that one time. It was two
There's
great
no
things.
downside.
No downside whatsoever. It was ended up excellent.
All pros, no cons.
I will say, we're heaping a lot of praise onto. I had a couple criticisms, but they're not very.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Oh, I do
particularly
too. Trust
strong
me.
or anything. But I also thought that T'Challa was kind of like a boring character. Like he was very
Compared to some of the other
one-dimensional.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought Killmonger was a way stronger, more written in depth and substantial character than T'Challa. Had
Yeah, man,
motivation.
he had you could think like he had a greater emotional stake in the game. Like, T'Challa, leader of the country, absolutely, he's got to make sure he does right by everybody. But for Killmonger, it hits so much closer to home that like his family was royalty, and he was like shunned out of a potential for his birthright to lead, and that molded him. His experiences molded him to such the tragic, almost you could call him a tragic villain that he turned out to be later
Right.
on.
Yeah, and then the last thing I have for criticism is I thought that the CG was sometimes
Yep.
really bad.
Yep.
Most of it was cool when they were showing like the city or like the spaceships, but there was
What
one
were some of the
scene in
parts that got you?
particular. Yeah. So in what was it at the end when they're facing off 1v1 in their like Black Panther suits?
Yeah.
They're on that like bridge rail thing.
Yeah,
with the train going by.
the rail system used to ship the vibranium.
Yeah, like there were just some sequences where they're trying to like, fight each other and looked like a video game like PS2 cutscene.
Totally did.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell? Like, it's 2018. Like, aren't VFX artists like better than this now?
Oh, we started running out of money in the budget.
You could definitely tell. So
that might have been the reason for that, because some of the CG wasn't exactly cutting edge all the time, but you could argue that wasn't even like the main focus for me. Is just seeing the characters, but the artistic direction of the costumes, the clothing,
Beautiful.
everything. I mean, that was really awesome.
Well, see, what I heard was that the costume artist was initially not even, or she does other movies, but she does strictly historically accurate period pieces. Like
And that
she would do
shows.
like East Asian, like this, that, or like, medieval this and that. But so when she was asked to do a Marvel movie, particularly Wakanda, she was like, Wakanda's not a real place. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. So she drew mostly from like, African, historical garb and traditional garbs, and combined it with some really interesting like Afro punk elements and made it super, like, to me, really rad.
It worked, man. I mean, heck, and this is coming from, I've seen my fair share of Black Panther comics and what that artistic style is all like. So yeah, it meshes, it goes well on screen. It was just so bright and colorful, and yay, Wakanda! It's just kind of like you get in the flow, you get in the vibe of the whole situation. It really works.
Well, okay. Well, due to time, I think we got to close it out here. So, any final closing thoughts on Black Panther, Brad?
Go see it. It's well worth your time. Great, not just a great superhero movie, but a great movie in general. It's a ton of fun.
Great. I absolutely echoed that. And Yep, you got to go see it. My girlfriend saw it twice. I saw it once and very much enjoyed it, and we'll be getting it for DVD home release. So, yeah, Wakanda forever.
Wakanda.
I'm gonna greet my coworkers like that from now on. Just do like the crossing the arms, chest bump thing. They're like, "What are you doing? Are you 28? Are you an adult?" I'll be like, "I don't care." Okay, well, that's it for us this week. Thanks for sticking around and celebrating our 25th Silver podcast anniversary. It was a great time had by all. Maybe we can renew our vows together sometime.
Pop culture bento forever.
Yeah, PCB forever. But yeah, be sure to visit us at popculturebento.com. We've got articles and video game reviews and everything all there. Follow us on Twitter at popculturebento. You can find our co-host pages. I'm at jrustterrier, Justin's at jhrussell94, and Brad is at Bradley McGinn 2. So without further ado, we're out. Be excellent to each other, and we'll talk to you next time on PCB.
That's gonna be a thing now. Peace out.